Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 148 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. So have you ever wished that you had something specific to be able to hand someone in order to tell them what are good things to say and what are really stupid things to say that you should avoid? Well, if you've ever wanted to have something to hand to people, this week's guest is really the person for you because she wrote a book that is based just on that. The book is called What Did You Say? You can find it on Amazon. And it goes through those kind of comments that people say that really are very well-meaning but hurt tremendously. And the most beautiful thing about it is in each instance, she goes through recommendations as to what should have been said instead. So I am excited to introduce all of you to Sherita and for you to be able to hear the story of her children and her grief journey. Thank you so much, Sherita, for agreeing to come on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today. I am so looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you for having me. Really, I really appreciate
Absolutely.
being here.
Absolutely. So Sherita reached out to me just a few weeks ago now, not that long ago, because she's got a book that she wanted to talk about that I'm really excited to talk to you about. And interestingly, we kind of talked about the book, and I had known that she had joined Compassionate Friends a number of years ago after the death of her son, William. But what I didn't know until after we wrote back and forth a few times was that she has actually lost 3 of her sons. So it's funny because we started talking today and I said, that's really hard for me to wrap my head around. And Sherita's response was, that's really hard for me to wrap my head around. So I think that's true. It's just so unbelievable to have gone through this loss, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And they're all very separate instances, not related to each other at all. But I do want to start out just kind of how I always start out by talking about our kids and what made them unique and what made them special and their wonderful personalities so we can get to know them a little bit. So in your case, we get to talk about 3 of your 5 kids. So why don't you tell us a little bit about William?
Well, William was the last child and the best and brightest and funniest. He kind of ruled the house being the baby.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of catered to him. He and Emir were the closest in age, but William tended to dominate how things went. And Emir just kind of went along.
It's funny how sometimes those tag-alongs can be like that. I see that in households sometimes. Yeah. And I'll even have conversations with families like, you can't let the baby boss everyone else around. But it's just so easy to do it, right? For those older siblings to be like, oh, it's William. He's so cute. Yeah. We don't want him crying. Whatever.
Right. Yeah. And it's just a delight to be around. Just a really, really cool kid. Mm-hmm. He made me laugh. We're a spiritual Christian family. And William would always kind of remind us, hey, did you pray about it? And his great grandparents would come over and they said, William can pray. And they, the baby.
And he was a little guy. He was just like 4, right?
Yes. They would call him in whenever they came over to visit and he laid hands on his great great grandfather. Yeah. Great.
Really?
And, and then he went back out to play. It was like he said a few words and went out. And he would do stuff like that. And he also would, the one time they had found an old mattress out of the back of the alley, the back of the house. They had dragged the mattress over to the house and was doing flips off the roof. William was a part of the jumping. And I'm looking out the kitchen window going, what's going on? And I flew out the window.
Oh my word. I bet you were like, I can't even imagine.
But he would always do things that I had to really stay on my toes about and watch. And
yeah.
Yeah.
What were the ages of all your kids then? Well, how far apart are they all? Maybe that'd be an easier question to ask.
If I go
top to bottom.
Yeah. Bryant, my oldest, is 18 months older than my daughter.
Okay.
And then the next child is, 2 years younger. Elon was 2 years younger than Yisa. And then, let me see. Elon was born in 1978. Emir was born in 1983.
So that's more like 5 years.
5 years. And then...
Yeah, so they're the furthest apart. And then the last two were kind of close together.
Right. The 5, and then the baby would have been, I guess...
Yeah.
7-ish.
Yeah, right. Okay, wow. But you had a busy house.
Yeah, it was.
So there was one that had a pretty big age gap, but the others were pretty close together. Yeah. I mean, 18 months, 2 years, pretty close together. So you had a lot happening. I bet they had a lot of fun.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they, basketball and school things. And William would have been going to school the year he died. And so I was gearing up for a couple of things. Either I was going to homeschool him and Emir, or that's what my mind was at.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to put into them a little bit more Christian principles and godly, principles and things like that. Yeah. So that's because I had started buying curriculum and researching.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
A lot of things just changed.
Yeah.
1990.
Yeah. We can go on now and talk about Emir and Elon if you want, just about their personalities as kids, because I think that would be fun to do. And then we'll step back and talk about what happened to William.
Okay. Emir, his name means prince. It's a Middle Eastern Arabic name, Emir. Emir means prince in Arabic. And so that was pretty much him. He wore that. He was proud of that, of being the prince, and like coming to America kind of thing. That God is the king in some land, some far away land that, could be respected and loved. Sweet, artistic. He loved to draw. He drew cartoons, and he made he was a part of the illustrated. He did the illustrations for a class project pulling things together. He loved doing things like that, and he also was a tattoo artist.
Oh, really?
And so,
that I could see how it would lead to that. All that artistic ability would lead to that.
He was good, and he did a lot of tattoos, and we sent him to school, and we got to get all of the learning, and I would help him with buying his art and inks and just different things, and he sometimes would do tat up people in the house. What was kind of interesting, crazy about that is that tattoos hurt. I've never had one, but one young lady came over and she really shook the house with her hollering. And what? Hold on. He's down in the basement making all, doing his thing. And it's like, Emir, we're going to have to find you your own studio or something. Because
right. People are going to think something else is going on in this house, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I've spoken to a lot of moms, bereaved moms, who have had tattoos after their kids have died.
Yeah.
And I have thought about it, but I never have done it.
Yeah. Well, my daughter has taken that place.
She has?
Because my daughter and Emir were the closest of all the siblings.
Yeah.
They're 8 years apart, and he was like her baby. She
yeah.
wanted a sister.
Uh-huh.
It was her brother, then her, and then Elon, and then so Emir should have been a girl for her. But
she thought every other kid, right?
Right. But she wound up being the only girl. Anyway, but her and Emir got along the best, and so yeah, he tatted her, and she got things to remember Emir and her grandmother, different things she's gotten from Emir.
Yeah.
That he actually tatted her.
Oh, that's neat.
And that's special. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about Elon now?
Elon. Oh boy.
So he was your middle child.
Right. And he had that typical middle child issue challenge or what have you.
Yeah.
Of I'm not the oldest, I'm not the baby, so how do I fit in? And William got everybody's attention and would boss people around, and Emir and William would sort of play together. Elon would sometimes have other friends come to just have that balance, even though, he played with his sister, his older sister, and an older brother, but that typical middle.
Right, but still, there wasn't somebody really close, like a boy, super close in age to him. He was like 5 years the one way, or probably 3.5, 4 the other way too.
Yeah.
Right.
So his was usually he was going with someone else's house to play, or somebody else was coming to our house to play with him like that. Of course, during the summers and they'd be outside and doing the sprinkler and pools, sandbox, doing different things. It would just be a mishmash of it. Didn't matter who was there, and other kids would come to the house because there's always somebody to play with. Other boys, of course.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But sweet and dear, handsome. It took I had to explain things to him a little bit more, whereas my oldest child would just catch on to it and run with it. And my daughter, she even though she was the second, she acted like the oldest, and she still does. She caught on to it, but Elon, I had to just explain things just a little bit more to him, like the dishes. If it was his turn to wash the dishes, Elon would wash just the dishes. I'd have to come back and say, well, there's the pots and pans and like it. But he said, well, yes, you said, Mom, So it was one of those things. They would do good, and it did typical kid things.
And again, a pretty fun household with all of those kids, I'm sure. Yeah. Lots of fun and lots of excitement.
Yeah.
So your first big change obviously came, as you said earlier, in 1990. So why don't you talk about that and what happened to William?
We were all at a restaurant, and all three of my boys died on a Thursday. Thursday is our typical night to go to choir rehearsal. And at that time, I was directing the choir. So we went to eat because I didn't have time to do dinner stuff before time to get to church. And we were all we finished up, we were at Pizza Hut, and William and Emir said they had to go to the restroom. And there was 2 doors to the restroom. William decided to go out the door I couldn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And he went out, and the older boys had went across the street to go to a boutique. William
Okay.
decided to follow them. And that's where he got hit by the car.
Wow. So you were waiting, watching the one door,
Right.
and he snuck out the other one without you
Right.
knowing.
Right.
And then just in an instant.
Yeah. He would do that. Now William and Emir were together. Emir, when I hear the crash and what have you, and
Yeah.
I tell my daughter, "Hey, help, run, go," that kind of thing. So
Right.
my daughter was the first one to get to him because he was laying in the street.
Uh-huh.
But Emir, just a couple of years older, he's in the car, and he said,
Really?
"I told William to come to the car," but theoretically, in my mind and heart, I thought they both could have crossed the street, and I could have lost
Right.
them both
Right.
that day. And this is the first
Right.
time I've shared that without
Mm-hmm.
breaking down. So,
And I think that's probably helpful for people to hear, right? Because this is now 32 years ago, right? That this happened. This is a long time ago. And I think it's reassuring to all of us because I can't tell the story of Andy without breaking down for sure. I'm not 4 years. I absolutely can't. To know that that's okay. It's okay to still be just really emotional when you have to talk about such a devastating, horrible thing. Mm-hmm. So you told me that after William's death, you already started having some of these writings that ended up becoming your book eventually.
yes, as people came to visit, and
Mm-hmm.
during the funeral times, bring dishes
Yeah.
and come. And one of the ladies from church, who also had 5 children,
Mm-hmm.
she came and said, oh, other things, but the thing that stood out was that she said, "Well, at least you have 4 others."
Yeah.
She was the first.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
standing in the kitchen when she said it.
Yeah.
And normally I'm a mild,
Yeah.
kind person, and again, because we both had 5 children,
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Which one of yours would you like to die so you can say you have 4 others?"
Yeah. I'm glad you said that actually. I have a good friend, Stephanie, who had 5 and she lost 1. And someone said that same thing to her, same exact thing. And she said she thought in her head, and which of yours would you like to
Right,
die? But she didn't say it out
right,
loud. And I'm proud of you actually for saying it out loud
yeah,
because it is something that people don't think about. I know they put it in their own head to make themselves feel a little bit better,
right.
but but they don't really think
No,
about it. What did she respond? Do you remember what she said or did?
I felt bad because I don't like to hurt people's
Said it.
feelings,
Right, right, right.
but
Uh-huh.
so I noticed she dropped her head.
Right.
People around her honed in on her and looked at her. Oh,
Yeah.
and then she said, "No, I wouldn't want that to happen. Just no." She just
Yeah.
kind of agreed with me.
Right.
Then somebody took her outside and said, "You gotta go."
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that was a good thing to say just to make her realize like no, there isn't I wouldn't be willing to give up one of them. I wouldn't. Like and I could never pick to give up one of them, right? Mhm. Yeah, so that was one of the very first things and that was early then,
right,
right? In those early days.
yeah, the
Mhm.
second day after he died, maybe somewhere in there. The days are
Yeah.
fuzzy. The times are fuzzy. Clear. I could go into. I remember some things. I remember the the dress I had on and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I remember always hollering,
Yeah.
screaming, and, crying.
Yeah.
A lot of crying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because I went to a support group shortly afterwards, but it was maybe the second session. So it was, I don't know, maybe even close to a year after Andy died, that we had a session, and it was on lament and really showing lament and crying. And lament is used a lot in the Bible. You hear a lot about people lamenting. But then when we really talked about it, I remember saying to the other people there, I said, I always just called it the bad cry. Like when I was doing the really bad cry, when I was like just wailing and sobbing and completely out of control. And I thought, that is when I was really showing lament. And that is a healthy response and a good response. Yeah. But instead in my mind, it was like, that's the bad cry. That's what I don't want to do. But when you think of it as lament, it's a thing that you need to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, is about. And he wrote the book of Lamentations. So, yeah.
About showing
lament. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I always knew that as our family and the various funerals that we have experienced, the death and loss and crying and hollering and wailing is the way for me to get release.
Yeah. And it isn't the way for everyone, but
right.
When it is the way for you, it's good to let it out, to really do that. Because if you are forced by people around you, society in general, to hold that all in, when that is your natural mechanism to let it out, it just holds back your healing so much.
Right. Well, I always tell people to holler. I will. I say go outside and holler. Go run or scream or what have you. And after William's death, that I became the person that would help people. And I said, hey, call me. I'll holler with you. And
And I've had people say to me, some men, I can think of a dad in particular, that said, I was always just so afraid that if I started crying, I would never stop.
I hear that a lot.
And I'm like, you know what? You will stop. And it will be a huge release for you if you can do it. If you can let it go. It can be scary. And it can be scary for other people. I mean, I remember my foster son finding me up doing the lament cry in Andy's room one day, months after Andy died. I was just sobbing, just uncontrollably on the floor. And he came up, and you could tell he was just had no idea what to do, right? And it doesn't help that he is from Guatemala, from a family that is not really emotionally great and emotionally supportive. So I think that was really hard for him to see. But he just kind of patted me a little bit. And it was nice that he was trying. Yeah. And I think overall, it ended up being good for him to see me completely fall apart. But I still probably, I can't promise you, but I still probably made him dinner that night, right? I mean, that release can give me the ability to now be able to do some of those things. And had I held it all inside, I may have just been paralyzed in bed that day and not be able to do anything. But the fact that I did take the time to let it all out made me so I could still make the family dinner and things like that. So
I'm glad you were able. And like you said, around kids, you try to guard them and protect them.
Yeah. And he fortunately is a little older. He was 20 at the time. So, he wasn't tiny. I mean, I even don't think at Peter at 12, I think I held back a little. I don't think I let him see the full screaming and hollering. I mean, sometimes you just have to, but it's good to do it in pieces, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to move on next? We're going to jump now ahead.
Okay.
Or let's see now. That's going ahead a long ways. I was going to say 13 years, but it's 23 years later with you when your second lost.
Yes.
Right. So you had a good number of years with the 4 kids. They all grew up. They all started kind of careers on their own. So what happened then with Emir in 2013?
Well, Emir was 29.
Mm-hmm.
He would move in and out, back and forth from the house to his own place, and he had a troubled teen uh, teenage. He had a lot of issues, struggles, challenges, and we started out going to therapy together. But Emir had some issues, and he just did all kinds of things and got into trouble, legal situations, and all that. But this, at the time, the year of his death, he had moved out and living with his girlfriend and doing tattoo parties all the time and doing other odd jobs. He still hadn't gotten settled. I mean, he was doing good, doing better. I'll put it that way.
Right.
The year he died in August 1st, 2013 was a Thursday. And my daughter was coming home from Tennessee, and she's part of a sorority, and we were going to have a going away party for her to go when she's going back to Tennessee. And so Emir was supposed to come over the house and help me put up some tents and get the backyard straight and all that stuff. So I'm waiting on him to come. His girlfriend calls me and says, we got to get to the hospital. I said, what? What you mean? Confusion and what have you. And we stopped what we're doing because I was maybe working in the back on some hostas or something. And we get to the hospital. And because of what I had went through with the hospital with William, I it was a different hospital, but I still had that same kind of feeling. Like something's going on. Because they guarded me with William. They took me here and took me there. And then, so when we get there to the hospital, they said, Thomas family, we want you to wait here. I said, no, I'm not waiting. Take me to my child now. Hold on. I said, no, I don't know what's going on. Well, there was just things that I had already built up that I was adamant about. I wasn't going to just sit and wait and take. And
because you'd done that already.
Yes.
You'd done that before.
Right. I wanted to know. Take me to my child. What's going on? Anyway, there was times in between. There were a lot of medical personnel in the hallway as we went past a certain room, which I later found out was the room where he was at. They were doing things to get him back and resuscitated or what have you. But I could see the different uniforms, the white coats, the blue, the EMS, and I could see all of that. There was so much stuff, and it was very hard, very difficult. But I knew something had happened. It took them a little while to come, and they said the doctor's going to come and explain what's what. Well, Emir had a seizure and died. Now, he never had seizures, never, ever before. We all know that death is basically your heart and stops working and you die. But so I knew that, but how? What?
Right.
Emir did smoke marijuana, but I know marijuana wouldn't kill you. I knew that.
Right.
So basically on his death certificate, it was the cause of death is unknown.
Wow.
Because his father worked with medical exams, and he knew some lingo. He knew things to ask and things like that. Because my ex-husband is still and he'll do the funerals. He's played for funerals. We both would go to people's funerals, talk to people, and all that. That's the kind of thing we did together. He knew some things to do. We went down to the medical examiners and trying to find out how did he, nothing. They had no answer, no cause. And it was like a 6-month wait and delay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet it took a long time.
But my husband knew some of the examiners because at one time he was an autopsy assistant. So he knew some things and he knew some people, and he had been down to the morgue so many times to pick up and, deliver or what have you.
Right.
So they listened to him and tried to comfort him during all those times. Now, these years later, I feel that Emir must have had a heart attack, even though they did not say it on the cause of death. Yeah. But that's what the death certificate just says, unknown. And so that unknown reason seemed to haunt me and plague me. And
for sure,
his friends would come and say, well, was it this and was it that? And
that's the thing. And people always want to then have some sort of reason.
Right.
And it's just so hard when there isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember my therapist saying to me that the mom, especially because she works a lot with bereaved moms, always wants to know exactly what happened. Right. And I'm always haunted by the fact that I have no memory of the 30 minutes after he died. And I recently actually had someone reach out to me on Facebook because they had just seen me on TV, because I was just interviewed on TV with some of the stuff with his graduation, and reached out and gave me a few more details and actually told me that I was walking around behind our van. And it actually kind of bothered me because now I know I was walking and yet I still don't know. So I think about that, not knowing what is happening and how that just can eat at you. So just like for me, not knowing what in the heck the woman was doing when she hit the car, because there's no reason she should have. And for you, it's like, why did this possibly happen to a totally healthy 29-year-old guy? Right? I mean, you just feel like you want answers to be able to know why something happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure everyone then ends up getting their like ideas as to why something happened. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that can't be easy to hear either.
It's not. Most of them, my daughter or Emir's dad sort of fielded or shielded me from, because they knew people might say something crazy, because they knew how I felt about crazy things that people say.
Yeah.
Because I had, had started the book, and they knew about it because they've seen the rough drafts and first drafts and all that. And they knew to sort of protect me or guard me from what people would do. And anyway, they tried. Yeah. At we had the 2-day service thing, the viewing the night before, and then the next day the funeral. Right. At the viewing, we stayed at the funeral home, and because I knew most of Emir's friends, and he had friends of all nationalities, because where we live, he was just that kind of guy, and because of his art, his
that's what I was thinking too. Yeah,
people would just gravitate to him, just loved him. And then I'm open and friendly. And then Emir's dad, because he's played so many funerals and weddings, there was just going to be a lot of people. And his friends, people that he's tatted up, came and started showing me their tats.
Oh.
That was so overwhelming. Yeah. And it was like, what? Because here's the lady coming up and doing this, and they showing me legs and pulling up down. I was like,
I don't need to see extra skin. Thank you.
Oh, man.
But what a beautiful thing that there are pieces of Emir all over, right?
Yeah.
I just think how beautiful and amazing that is to just know that there are little bits of him all over your whole community and people remembering him. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, they've done
Wow.
some, Facebook posts, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said, the mayor had some challenges and issues, and he would be doing stuff. We went on vacation, and the mayor had a party at the house, and they taped
Oh,
it.
dear.
It
Mm-hmm.
was wild.
Oh, no.
When we came home, there was ketchup in the ceiling, but they tried to wipe it. But ketchup stains or tomato sauce.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I found stuff for like a week later. Beer cans rolling from under the couch. They did. They tried to get it all out and what have you. It was something. But there's and Emir also did beats, musical beats,
Okay.
and he did records and songs, and he rapped. He was a artist rapper.
Uh-huh.
So I've got a playlist of his songs,
Oh,
so I can hear his
that's awesome
voice.
too. That's like me with my Andy. I can hear his voice because he sang.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's funny. That story of the party reminds me there was a mom I interviewed a long time ago now who had her son. Somehow he was messing around at his bedroom or something. Or actually, you know what? It wasn't even somebody I had on the podcast. It's someone I met, a friend of mine. And they had somehow broken a hole in his bedroom wall.
Oh yeah.
But what he did is he covered it with a poster.
Oh yeah.
A big full-length poster, and his parents didn't know until the friend shared the story like at the funeral. And so they went home after the funeral, and sure enough, there's a huge hole in the wall. Isn't that crazy?
It is. But that's the kind of kid Emir was. He would do
Yeah, I know.
things,
That
and
reminded me the same.
yeah, the stories, I could do a whole book on just Emir and all the he kept me praying. He
Yeah.
for sure.
So let's move and talk about the book a little bit now, because that's when the book came out, really, was after Emir died. So you'd been starting to kind of work on it in all of those weird years after William. So was it after Emir's death that you felt more motivated, I would say, to
Emir's death was
that
the
was the
push.
push.
It's like, people need to know.
Yeah.
And again, for all of the stuff that people said to me that hurt me, or all of the things that are said across the pulpit, and the combination of pulling that together, I needed people to understand when you say this at this point in someone's life, this is what you're really saying, and this is what it means, and this is why it hurts, and this is what you should say or do instead.
Right. It is sad, but you're right. I love how you said it can come across the pulpit as well, because a lot of times these comments are from Christian people who are really trying to say a thing that is comforting, but it ends up not being that way. So a good example to me is I always felt like when I would get some of those comments said to me about just about how Andy's in heaven now, and kind of like you shouldn't really be sad because he's in heaven and he's happy, and when he want me to be happy and all that. So those comments, then now I not only am sad and missing Andy, but now I'm feeling really guilty because I'm thinking now I'm a really bad Christian. Because if I was a good Christian, then I would feel happy about this, right? And so now I'm feeling like I'm a sad, awful, person in a sad place, and I'm not a good Christian anymore. So it ends up doubling you feeling bad, even though the whole reason they said it was because they wanted to make you feel better. So what do you think about that?
It's crazy because people don't really know Christ, I think, when they say that.
Yeah.
Because, see, I understand where people go or where, basically, your body is just a shell. So
Yeah.
nobody's in heaven yet. They're all, their bodies have gone, their soul is resting in special place with the Lord, and their spirit, of course. I don't really want to go real heavy and deep into that, but I'll say that
Right. We don't have to go really into that. Mm-hmm.
people say people are in heaven to make people feel better. They're
Yeah.
not. No matter what we do to the body, be it from the cremation to the embalming and putting in the lavish casket or what have you, it's just, that's not them.
Right. Right. That's not them. You're right.
Emir, William, and Elon are always with me, period. No matter how it goes and how it looks. I move to Australia, if I go to Antarctica, whatever, wherever I may be, they're with me. And they will never die as long as as I'm alive. And I will always be hurting and missing them until I die. And so when people, say, well, your Christendom should not come into play as far as how you would be, if you're a good Christian or a bad Christian. You're an excellent Christian. Because if you love Christ, that's what makes you a Christian.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But how you do and respond and act. And in the book, I state the answer to that question. I put, they're trying to me, it's like I'm a good mother, and I have to know that because I felt so much guilt when William died.
Sure, of course.
And like, if I only had this and that, so I beat myself up, and I'll tell him, hey, I beat myself up enough. You don't have to add to it.
Right.
Wherever my kids, their soul is resting, their spirit is, with the Lord or what have you, their bodies no longer work. So that's why they're dead. And I'm not comforted by you telling me you should feel good that they're in heaven. That's not good.
Yeah.
Because I could have I could have taken care of them. I could have helped them. I could have helped them to move on, to flourish, to make better decisions, or what have you. So you're not comforting me by saying they're somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's I understand it, but I'm away from the punch of death.
Right.
I'm away.
It almost just makes me feel a little bit upset and angry. Yeah. That now
you kicked me in, you dumped me in the throat, you kicked me, you took the breath out of me to tell me, well, he's in a better place. And I'm going, how do you know?
Right. Have you been there and back? I don't.
According to the Bible.
That's a good point, too.
Yeah, I mean, we know Jesus is resurrected, and he, let us know how things go. Lazarus tells us the story of that, but those are the only people that can really kind of tell you, they've gone.
And even the story of Lazarus, Jesus wept.
Yes. Yeah.
And he likely knew that he had, he obviously knew he had the ability to get him back. Yeah. And he still wept anyway. So I think that's why it really, people have to understand, let us weep. Absolutely. Let us mourn. Please. Yeah. Jesus wept, and he raised Lazarus 3 minutes later, and he still took the time to weep and mourn.
Yes. And so when it comes down to being a Christian, that I just smile at people. And so.
Well, I'm glad you can.
They don't know.
I know sometimes I will get a little, smarmy, I would say, and that, because sometimes people will say that we'll do this one. It's all part of God's plan. And I don't really like that one either. Right. So my response, depending on the circumstances, will be, well, for me, God's plan really stinks
Yeah.
today.
And I said that so many times, and I never did start recovering from William's death because I was angry at God. I was like, wait a minute, I'm a Christian and I'm doing these things. I'm teaching Sunday school. I'm the director of the choir. I'm
The
directing in
choir, yeah.
Christian education for Vacation Bible School. Why'd you take my child? All these other moms and dads out here that's acting a fool, take theirs.
Right.
And it's like, no, because then I'm saying the same thing as this other lady is saying, okay, well, at least you got four others. No.
Right.
That's and that helped me in developing the answers in the book.
Right. So yeah, I love that. So you go through the book and you say, these are some things that were said to me. This is what you say instead, right? And so this is a kind of book I think you recommend for your friends and family. Go get this so you don't fall into those traps of saying the wrong thing. Because the other thing I get is that then people get scared that they're going to say the wrong thing. And so they say nothing. Mm-hmm. And to me, I tell people, when you say nothing, that's worse to me. Because I'd rather have you say the wrong thing and at least have tried than to have you say nothing. Because when you say nothing, then I think you don't care and you don't remember at all. And in fact, it might be because you were just so scared to say anything that you were going to say the wrong thing that you said nothing. So that's why I think I love what you did, because you didn't just go through and say, they did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. You gave ideas as to how to turn that same sentiment and what they meant and say something good instead. Yes. Right? Yes. And give them the tools to be able to say the right thing. Say the right thing, yeah. Yeah, I just had someone this last week. We had this camp dedication, and I had one of my coworkers say, I hope you enjoy today or something. And I just said thanks. I didn't say anything else. But obviously that was not a great word to use, because I'm going to cry through the entire thing, and it's not going to be an enjoyable experience. And then she wrote back, she said, I'm sorry if that was the wrong thing to say. I don't know what to say. So I just said that. And I said that, and then I wrote that back to her. I said, the big thing is I'm so appreciate the fact that you tried. And then I said, I'm not sure I will be able to enjoy today, but I really appreciate the way that they're honoring Andy today. And she wrote back and said, appreciate, that's a better word than enjoy. And so, I was just going to let it go, but I'm really glad that I did actually kind of correct her, especially when she said, I was so worried I was going to say the wrong thing, because she almost didn't send anything, for me to now give her the right word to have put in its place, because I didn't enjoy Monday. Not a bit of me enjoyed Monday. Did I appreciate it? Yes, 100%. Did I love seeing those camp counselors and letting them know a little bit about my son so they can help share? Because it's a Christian camp. It's a Bible camp. So they're going to learn about Jesus. Right. So I loved being able to share my son's faith so that they could know how key it is to be able to share that with other kids, right? And in their faith journeys as well. So I appreciated it to no end, and I'm so glad we did it, but enjoying wasn't quite the right word.
Yeah, it's where you are at the moment to say enjoy or appreciate. You'll later, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, enjoy the memories and the pictures and looking back upon it, but you'll still be at an appreciative state. But it's fresh. When things are fresh, it's a different attitude that you have. And the whole thing is that even I don't know, or you don't know exactly what's going to jab or what's going to hurt, or, the cut is there, and you put the vinegar or the lemon or the onion or whatever stings you into it. Antibiotics when the cuts come, or Bactine or what have you with the scrapes.
Bacitracin.
It hurts initially and gets rid of the infection. So you're glad the infection is gone, but it still hurts, it still stings.
Yeah.
And that's death. It's a sting.
So your book has been out for how long now?
A year.
A year. So it's been out a year. And how can people get that book?
Through Amazon.
Okay, wonderful. And the name again,
Is
it'll be on the website,
yes.
but
What did you say?
what did you say? Yeah, what did you say?
Yeah. And you've seen it, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. I like the picture on the front.
Yeah, it took me a while to get that.
So I don't. Now we need to go on to talk about Elon and your final loss, which actually came after the book was published, which is again just mind blowing to me that would happen. So you published this book a year ago now, and then last December you had tragedy strike again.
Well,
so talk about that a little
bit. Because the book was out, and because of people that know me and friends, family, or what have you, most people didn't say anything.
Yeah, they didn't say the wrong thing. Yeah.
Right. So they knew, the only thing they really could do is just call or text or say,
yeah,
I love you. And so I didn't have anything.
So what happened with Elon?
Elon's, goodness, 43, married for the second time. He and his second wife, we all lived in Michigan or Romulus together. But his first wife and 3 daughters live in Texas. So Elon decided him and his second wife to move to Texas to be closer to his girls. They weren't having a good time. They were at odds. The first wife and the second wife, and the kids are teenaged years. Elon had some stuff in a garage at the apartment where he was living, and someone had broken in and taken his things. Okay, so things are missing out of his garage because they had moved stuff is in storage and all that. And there was a camera, but I'm not sure if it was at the right angle to see that people had got where they had gone in. And then the garage door was broken. So Elon was going to the front office to let them know something's wrong with my garage door and people have stolen my stuff. If he got a chance to get all that information in, I'm not sure. In the middle of the night, or that early that morning before his death, there was an argument with people around the apartment complex. He met up with some guy. They were outside talking. And the guy was saying that he knew who had the stuff and Elon was fighting. Now, how I know that information is that someone else was taping it, on their phone, they're videotaping it. And they sent that videotape to my daughter. So I got a chance to watch Elon and this guy exchange words. We still don't know exactly who did it because I think that the people that were involved, they moved, they got put out of the complex. Anyway, Elon comes home early the next day. Again, in the back of his mind, I'm sure he's thinking about who has broken into it and who may have it and what have you. He gets home. His wife tells me she hears knocking on the door. She hears Elon and some guys arguing. And the whole thing is fuzzy to me. So the exact details, I can't really tell you. I know she's his second wife is she's she got to try to get a lawyer. The lawyer told her there's no way. She wanted to get his name proven that basically Elon went and knocked on the door, or he was ambushed into thinking these are the guys that took your stuff. He not in the door. the guy comes back and shoot Elon because Elon is getting agitated and talking or what have you. Again, real fuzzy.
Yeah.
The story came out that Elon broke into a house and got shot. So, yeah.
It's hard to know. Yeah.
It's definitely hard to know. Elon has always had a temper from 4 years old. If he didn't get his way or what have you, he got in trouble with. In kindergarten, they was going to sit him in the corner all the time. I had to go up and see what's going on. He didn't bit somebody or something, so there was always this kind of thing going on with him. And he could get quick. He could get mad real quick, kind of like that 0 to 60, 0 to 100 with him.
Yeah.
So I just say his temper got him into trouble.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let him go. He wouldn't let it go. And he wanted his stuff. That was in the garage. He just wasn't going to let it go.
So then you have to go through this all again.
Yeah.
Losing your third son.
Yeah.
And then, and having him be shot and killed. I mean, all of your kids died so suddenly.
Yeah.
None of them from you consider a more natural illness or anything like that. Just all of them out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've come to terms that God knows the answers to his death.
Right.
And I'm finally not as angry, because I was basically angry at Elon for not letting it go, not easing up.
For getting into a bad circumstance.
Yeah. And I think his wife said it was some cars, motor driven, remote control cars. Elon liked to collect stuff. And some other thing. Some shoes. Elon loved gym shoes. Him and Emir both did. I mean, they would, talk about the latest this and the latest that, and Jordans and Nike and whatever. You name it. I've never been into that kind of stuff. But as them, they love shoes. So those kind of things, they're material things that he's gone.
It's hard for me to even think about having to go through that again like you have. It is interesting to hear you say, though, that having had all your family and friends read that book that you put out really changed how they talk to you, though. So, because I know in our email exchanges, you said not one person has said something that stood out to you as a really bad thing. And that, I think, shows really how much that is needed. Just a little guide like your book to be able to tell people, please say these type of things instead, because they can be really helpful and to me when I'm going through the very worst experience I could ever imagine, and avoid saying those other things because they actually can make it feel a little bit worse, even though you don't mean it. So that was really beautiful for me to read. You say that in the past now 6 months since Elon died, you've not had anybody say anything really stupid to you.
No, and definitely nothing I would put in a book, the things that would say, because there's no alternative answers, because the people that know Elon know his temper, or been a brunt of his, or been a part or a recipient of his temper, because words have exchanged and they've gotten into fights, and because Elon would just show up somewhere and talk about, did you say this about so and so and so? He would do those kind of things. So for them, it's like, I knew his mouth was going to get him in trouble. Basically, is the message that has come across from different people. And they would do everything they could to not say it to me. But I get it, because I already know.
Well, and you end up thinking those thoughts too. And it's funny how I've said this on the podcast before about how there are things you can say to yourself that it's okay if you say them to yourself, but if other people say them to you, then it's not
good.
okay. So that's one of those things too. Yeah. You can say to yourself, I knew that his mouth was going to get him in trouble, but you sure appreciate it with other people don't say that to you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I could tell people, don't jump on the bandwagon. Don't say like, girl, yeah, or amen, or whatever. Yeah, you right. You don't have to.
Yeah. No, you don't have to.
No. Let it go. And I've forgiven the people because I just have to move on. I have to move on from the lady, the automobile accident. The lady didn't see William and killed him. Forgiven. Circumstances, whatever. There's nobody to forgive for Emir. So it's like, no, he just stopped breathing. And and so I try to internalize, what does that mean to be without them? Mm-hmm. And it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. The thing that's coming, I'm looking forward to in August, Elon's oldest daughter is having a baby. Oh. So I have a great grandson coming in August.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's something, and I have 9 granddaughters.
Oh, so this is your first grandson?
So this is my first my first great grand, and it's a boy. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. Now, the last conversation me and Elon had was he was upset that she had gotten pregnant. Oh. I was happy. And I told him to say, hey, she's 19. She's grown.
Yeah.
And grown people do grown things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I said, so, yeah.
Well, Sherita, I so appreciate you sharing your boys with us today and your wisdom, because I do feel like you have such a good amount of wisdom to share with all of us, and that we can help, I think, maybe the people trying to support us by telling them really what are good things to say instead of what might instinctively come to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, say and do. Do different things. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful or would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can text Andy's Mom to the number 53555 or visit the donate page on andysmom.com. Your donations are secure and tax deductible, and we are now able to accept Venmo, PayPal, and Apple Pay. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 organization and can receive donations through smile.amazon.com, Thrivent Financial, and Benevity, amongst others. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com. Also, be sure to sign up for the email list to receive weekly updates as well as pictures of all of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.